classmate tells Ranka that her video from the previous day was very cute. Ranka thanks her and tells her to hit the like button if she enjoyed it. The classmate confirms that she already pressed it. The girl is Kichijouji Ranka's super popular influencer. Ranka is a famous streamer with over 1 million followers. She's known by the nickname of Japan's most famous high school girl. Boys in the class talk about how Ranka's latest dance video went viral with an insane amount of likes. One student says he is proud to be in the same class as her while Kiminaga scoffs nearby. Kiminaga thinks to himself that he does not need likes in his life. He views the recognition of others as nothing more than empty flattery. He considers things like watching movies at double speed or liking uninteresting posts to be a waste of time. He reflects on ancient teachings about the difference between a noble man who harmonizes and a petty man who merely conforms. Kiminaga views romance as the pinnacle of inefficiency. Other students whisper about him, noting that he does nothing but study and consistently ranks in the single digits on national mock exam. He looks down on his foolish classmates for wasting their lives at family restaurants and karaoke. Kiminaga plans to push himself to a higher level to find true happiness. He believes that by the time he becomes a true noble, his peers will have already forfeited the right to ever become one. Kiminaga is called into the principal's office. The principal confronts him about working a secret part-time job. The principal tells a shocked Kiminaga that he faces expulsion. She explains that the school received a tip about his job. She reminds him that violating the part-time job ban is a serious offense that leads to expulsion. Kiminaga wonders how he was caught. The principal mentions that expelling a student with such outstanding grades would be a harsh move. The principal addresses him as Kiminaga Shikimi-kun and tells him she will grant him a special act of leniency. Kiminaga arrives at a massive skyscraper. The principal has ordered him to come to her home to perform housekeeping duties. He thinks about how this new part-time job offer is much better than his previous work at a beef bowl restaurant or cleaning. He wonders if such a good deal really exists since it pays more and keeps him from being expelled. He concludes that more money is always a good thing, especially for helping his family. He arrives at the building and speaks into the intercom, identifying himself as the housekeeper. A woman's voice answers and tells him to come inside as she unlocks the door. He walks through the building. He notes that the unit is on the top floor and considers the place a mansion. He enters the apartment and announces his arrival. He feels confident because he is good at housework. He is immediately shocked by how filthy and cluttered the room is. He looks at the piles of cardboard boxes filled with clothes, convenience store trash, and leftover dishes. He notices something moving and sees a woman in lace underwear on the floor. She makes cute sounds and tells something to look over at her. He stares blankly as he hears the figure meow. He wonders if he is seeing a mysterious monster. He recognizes the woman as a classmate of his who does social media content. She continues to crawl on the floor making cat noises. He realizes she is just using her phone to film a cat. He introduces himself as the referred housekeeper. The woman begins to shake as she notices his presence. She screams and throws a pile of laundry at him. She covers her body and screams that he is a pervert. He gets hit in the face with her underwear. He questions if she is calling him a pervert. The girl yells for Maru and Kikuni to come out of the room. A girl wearing large headphones steps into the hallway and complains that Rank is being too loud because the noise is leaking into her microphone. A young girl in a school uniform arrives home and asks why her sister is dressed that way. Ranka screams that a perverted stalker thief broke in while she was busy filming, leaving the boy confused by the accusation. The three sisters confront the boy, who asks if they need housekeeping. The boy explains that he was told to come by the principal. The sisters are shocked that the boy knows their mother is the principal. He tells them his part-time job was discovered and working for them is the only way he can avoid being expelled. The boy realizes he knows Ranka as Kiminaga from his class. Ranka gets angry that he did not recognize her as a famous high school girl. Ranka fumes while the boy notes that she seems to have a very high opinion of herself. Ranka continues to call him a stalker, but the other sisters point out that the door is auto-locked and someone inside must have let him into the apartment. The girls call out for Kikuni to explain herself. A moving illustration appears on the large television screen and asks what they want. The sisters argue with the drawing on the monitor. The digital character apologizes and admits she forgot to mention she had hired a male housekeeper. The boy kneels on the floor as the sisters gather around and decide to start with introductions. The youngest sister introduces herself as Chainana, the fourth daughter and a genius voice actress. Meru introduces herself as the third daughter. She explains that gaming is her hobby and also her professional job. Chainana introduces the last sister, Kikuni, pointing toward a digital screen where the eldest daughter is visible. The girl on the screen introduces herself as Kuriki Hisoka, a professional illustrator and part-time VTuber. She quickly corrects herself, stating she is actually the eldest daughter, Kikuri. Chainana explains that Kikuri is the household's ultimate shut-in who almost never leaves her room. The digital avatar on the monitor waves a greeting to the boy. The boy reveals he has no idea what VTubing is causing the girls to call him an unusual person. They point out how the drawing on the screen is cute and moving. The boy looks at the massive pile of trash in the living room while the second daughter insists they do not need a housekeeper. The boy tells the second daughter to leave for an hour. He intends to prove to her that the household definitely needs a housekeeper. 1 hour later, the entire living room is spotless and organized. The sisters are amazed that the floor is shining and they can finally see the carpet. Meru notes that she can actually find her belongings now. The boy serves a meal he prepared using ingredients that were about to spoil in the fridge. The sisters find the freshly cooked rice delicious and realize this is how a normal human lives. The boy explains that he has been doing housework since elementary school and trained himself through various part-time jobs. Overwhelmed by the food, the second daughter declares that he is hired. She admits she has always dreamed of a life where food appears automatically. The second daughter slams her bowl down on the table with force. Suddenly changing her mind, the second daughter stands up and screams that the boy is not hired. The boy is confused because his work was perfect, but the second daughter pushes him toward the door. She insists that hiring him is absolutely out of the question. Ranka points her finger and screams at the boy to get out of the house immediately. The boy is left sitting on the floor in the hallway outside the apartment after the door slams shut. He starts to realize the gravity of his situation. The boy wonders if he has just set a new record for the shortest amount of time spent at a job before getting fired. Back at school, the boy explains everything that happened to a girl with long hair. She acknowledges the story and says she understands the situation. The boy's friend gets distracted by the sight of another student's knees peeking out from her skirt. The boy shouts at her to pay attention to his problem instead. The girl notes that the boy seems to be in quite a bit of trouble. He tells her she should show more concern since he is her only friend and is about to be expelled. The origin of the boy's nickname is explained, showing how Kunchi-kun is formed by combining parts of his surname Kiminaga and his first name Shikimi. The girl is identified as Mitaka Matsuba, a student with a strange nickname who is currently listening to the boy's complaints. They sit together in the cafeteria, as Matsuba tells the boy that his situation with the sisters is actually something people would envy. She reminds him that they are each other's only friends. The professional lives of the three younger sisters are detailed, highlighting Chainana as a young voice actress, Meru as a top pro gamer, and Ranka as a famous streamer. Matsuba explains that these girls are known as the Tier 1 sisters and are the pride of the school. She points out that many people would do anything for the chance to look after them. The boy asks about the eldest sister, and Matsuba explains that Kikuri never comes to school, but makes a massive income as a VTuber and illustrator. Matsuba quotes a proverb about harmony, and tells the boy he should try to meet the sisters halfway if he wants to keep his job. The boy resolves to give it his best effort. Matsuba says she will hire the boy herself and put him in a sailor suit if he loses this job. The boy asks her if she ever actually feels bothered by anything. The boy decides that his biggest obstacle is Ranka and he needs to find a way to get past her wariness. He approaches her in the classroom and calls out to her. Ranka clicks her tongue in annoyance, clearly displeased with the boy's presence. Shikimi realizes that his way of living is the complete opposite of Ranka's, making it feel almost impossible to bridge the gap between them. Despite the difficulty, he continues his efforts to talk to her in class, while others wonder what he wants. Even though the task seems daunting, the boy tells himself that he cannot afford to give up on this job. Back at the apartment, Shikimi wonders if Ranka is away for the day. He hears a sudden noise from the side as he prepares to enter. The fourth daughter, Chainana, suddenly pops out and enthusiastically welcomes him home as her big brother. Shikimi stands frozen by the door at the unexpected greeting. Chainana explains that she was just practicing her acting. Shikimi finds it creepy that she would call a stranger her brother, but she tells him not to treat her like a troubled child. He recalls that she is a professional voice actress. She decides to call him her senpai instead to be safe. Shikimi admits that her previous acting actually made him feel genuine fear. Chainana points out a pile of laundry for him to handle and runs off. Shikimi is relieved to see that at least one sister doesn't seem to hold a grudge against him. As he starts the chores, Shikimi pulls a large lacy bra out of the laundry basket. Chainana watches him from around the corner, waiting for a reaction. Chainana secretly hopes to see a typical high school boy's unfiltered reaction to her older sister's large underwear. Shikimi simply places the item into a laundry net with no reaction at all, which shocks Chainana. He explains that since he has a sister of his own, seeing underwear doesn't bother him. He asks if she was trying to bait him into acting unprofessionally so she could get him fired. She denies it, claiming she only wanted a reference for her acting roles. Shikimi mentions that it is not normal for a girl to invite a boy over for such reason. Chainana hints that her motivations go beyond just acting practice. Crouching on the floor, Chainana admits that she has always wanted an older brother. She playfully calls him by a brotherly nickname, saying he is just right for the role. Shikimi reminds her that he already has a little sister. Shikimi sees a girl stretching and yawning in the hallway as she wakes up. Meru offers a morning greeting but Shikimi points out that it is already 5:30 in the evening. He asks why she just woke up and why she wasn't at school. Meru asks why her schedule matters. Shikimi thinks to himself that her lifestyle is a major concern. Shikimi tells Meru she lives like a vampire since her sleep schedule is completely flipped. Chanana suggests that Shikimi should clean Meru's room as well. Shikimi notices a dark, ominous aura leaking from behind a nearby door. Shikimi enters the room and finds it buried under a massive pile of trash and boxes. Meru claims it isn't that messy and that she threw out some trash the previous day, but Shikimi is unconvinced. Shikimi begins to clean the disaster, while Meru warns him not to touch her keyboard or mouse. He reminds himself that the third daughter is a professional gamer. Shikimi lets out a shocked shout as he looks over at Meru. Meru is stripped down to her underwear right in front of him. Shikimi covers his eyes and tells her to have some shame and cover herself, realizing that even having a younger sister has its limits. Meru dismisses his outburst, claiming it is fine since nothing inappropriate is showing. Meru continues to move around the room in her underwear, telling Shikimi that since he is there to work, he should be able to brush off something like this. Meru gets close to Shikimi and asks if he is looking at the sisters in an inappropriate way despite his professional role. She tells him that if that is the case, she wants him to quit immediately. Shikimi tells her to just think of him as a cleaning robot so they can get through the task. Meru remarks that robots are actually cuter than he is. A girl appears on a monitor and calls Shikimi a hard worker or possibly just a pervert. Shikimi defends himself as a gentleman, but the girl on the screen calls that a discriminatory term coming from a protein-based life form. She concludes that he has likely never had a girlfriend, which leaves Shikimi stunned. Shikimi asks why she keeps jumping to these conclusions. The girl on the screen tells him he is the type who would claim having a partner is a waste even though he has never actually had one. Hikari tells Shikimi that he might actually be a good match for Ranka, because she is also incredibly self-conscious. Shikimi is surprised to hear that Ranka is a man-hater despite being a public streamer. Hikari confirms that Ranka has a solid dose of that sentiment mixed in. Hikari notes that Shikimi mistakenly thinks all streamers are just attention seekers, but she explains that they are often swallowed up by a need for validation. Shikimi asks why VTubers do strange dances and release songs even though they aren't professional singers. Hikari explains that it is simply a way to distinguish oneself from the crowd. She says it is about establishing one's existence as a person in a world overflowing with information. She then asks Shikimi if that same desire is why he draws. Hikari reveals that she does it because she is utterly bored despite the world being full of things, and she needs something to kill the time. Shikimi stares at her thoughtfully while listening to her reasoning. Hikari suggests that maybe people in the Jaman period just made pottery and were never bored, though Shikimi doubts that was their only activity. Shikimi admits he doesn't fully understand and asks if it's really just about wanting to be fawned over. Hikari calls him a bookworm but says having a passion is a wonderful thing regardless. She praises his thinking skills and tells him to put some effort into figuring out what Ranka truly needs. Shikimi considers the bizarre lifestyles of the sisters and wonders what people in their positions could possibly lack. He suddenly notices a calendar sitting on a nearby cabinet and has a realization. While the sisters come downstairs looking for food, Shikimi looks at the March calendar and asks if they are all technically self-employed. They confirm that they are. Ranka returns home and immediately tells Shikimi he isn't hired, but he interrupts her to ask if they have filed their tax returns yet since the March deadline is approaching. Shikimi aggressively demands that Ranka hand over her receipts, catching her completely off guard. Shikimi sits at a laptop scolding the sisters for leaving their tax paperwork until the last week. He orders Ranka to hand over her payment slips immediately, and she finally realizes he is talking about their tax returns. Shikimi questions the other sisters about their taxes. Ranka admits her mom handled it before. Hikari says she kept procrastinating on finding an accountant. Meru only recently went pro, and Chainana didn't earn enough last year to file. Shikimi looks at Ranka and tells her that all of them are completely hopeless as adults. Later that night, Ranka finishes her video editing work at her desk. As Ranka prepares to schedule her upload, Shikimi's harsh words about being a hopeless adult continue to ring in her head. Ranka gets frustrated, annoyed that someone like Shikimi is the one scolding her even if he is right. She tries to justify herself by thinking they are still technically within the deadline. She notices it is already after 10 p.m. and wonders why her mother sent a boy to live in a house full of girls. Ranka walks out of her room and spots Shikimi asleep at the table, still surrounded by paperwork in his laptop. She sees her own videos playing on his laptop and realizes he was watching them to verify which trip receipts could be claimed as business expenses. Ranka stands over him, realizing that managing their taxes goes far beyond his actual duties as a housekeeper. Shikimi starts to wake up as Ranka considers getting him a blanket. Shikimi asks if she woke him up and she admits she did. He thanks her as she stands there blushing. Ranka asks if he was watching her videos and with her heart racing asks him if he found them cute. Shikami lists all the cliches in her content from fake, no-makeup looks to generic morning routines and repetitive dances. He tells her bluntly that he doesn't really get the appeal, leaving her looking devastated and angry. Shikami admits that he actually found Ranka's travel vlog interesting. He praises her choice of scenery, and says the narration was easy to listen to. He notices there were no receipts from professional editors, and asks if she does all the editing herself. Ranka tries to tell herself not to feel happy about such a small compliment. Shikami adds that her upload frequency is also quite impressive. Shikami tells Ranka that his own work frequency might drop soon because he plans to quit once the tax returns are finished. Ranka is caught off guard by the sudden news. Ranka stares in complete shock at Shikami's announcement. Shikami explains that it really isn't appropriate for a male housekeeper to be in a house full of girls their age. He mentions that he will personally ask the principal to let him resign to avoid the expulsion issue. He says he's willing to grovel and bow as many times as it takes to make the resignation official. Ranka tells him good riddance as they stand together in the kitchen. As Shikami prepares to leave, Chainana points out that the last train has already gone. He assures her that he has his bike so he will be fine. Meru asks if he is truly going to quit for good. Shikami advises them not to let the next housekeeper in without supervision so none of the sisters end up flashing anyone else. Kikuri sighs on the monitor, disappointed that her life of effortless food is coming to an end. Shikami says goodbye and leaves the apartment, closing the door behind him. Inside, Kikuri comments that quitting was the smarter move for him given the late hours. Chainana wonders why Shikami even bothers with part-time jobs since he doesn't seem to spend money on himself. Ranka starts to realize he might have a serious reason for working so hard. Kikuri tells the sisters that Shikami's motivation is obviously to help his family. Ranka is surprised that Kikuri knew about his personal situation. Kikuri reveals that Shikami grew up in a welfare facility before being adopted by a family whose company later went bankrupt. She explains that he works part-time while aiming for a university with no tuition fees just so he can support his household. Ranka is horrified to learn the truth and shouts that nobody ever told her about his difficult background. Kikuri laughs and notes how hard Ranka was on such a dedicated student. Ranka points back at the screen and yells that the misunderstanding is entirely Kikuri's fault. Ranka announces she's going out for a moment, suspecting that Shikami is still just outside the apartment. Kikuri watches her leave and notes that Shikami's life experience is very similar to their own. Outside, Shikami prepares to ride his bike home while reflecting on how he rarely complains about the hand he was dealt. He recalls being a child from a welfare facility who was adopted by the Kiminaga family only for their business to go bankrupt 2 years later. Despite losing his inheritance, he felt nothing but gratitude for being taken in. Shikami resolves to never lean on others, and to manage everything with his own strength, using a man from his past as a cautionary example. As Shikami thinks about avoiding being a burden to the four sisters, Ranka catches up to him and shouts for him to wait. Shikami asks if he forgot something, and a flustered Ranka yells that she wants him to stay so she can apologize. Ranka admits that 2 of her sisters like him and confesses that she was angry with him for no good reason. She tells him to ignore her lingering anger over the underwear incident and just let her apologize, prompting Shikami to say he is sorry as well. Ranka bows deeply to apologize again, and explains that her family has strayed from a normal life path, living selfishly, because their mother is almost never home. She acknowledges that he is struggling at home, and trying to handle everything by himself without help from any adults. Ranka points at him and states that while she can't stand him and assumes he feels the same, they can still work together. She suggests that in their current situation they can both be useful to one another. Ranka argues that they can cooperate for their own individual benefit rather than just relying on each other. Ranka extends her hand and tells Shikami to rely on them because he is clearly struggling, adding that she is also sick of eating delivery food. Shikami ponders whether a wise person chooses cooperation over simply leaning on others. He then jokes to Ranka that he might still accidentally walk in while she is changing. Ranka tells him that such an incident would be his mistake too, and warns him to be careful. Shikami points out that his voice might end up on her live stream, which Ranka admits would be a massive problem. Ranka strikes a pose, and tells Shikami that he must take responsibility if he ends up causing a scandal. As he cycles away into the night, Shikami thinks to himself that he is willing to grovel or even shave his head as many times as necessary to make amends if needed. In a flashback to the building lobby, Shikami thanks Ranka for letting him stay the night. She replies that it was fine since he stayed late to finish the work they asked of him. Shikami mentions that he does have a cell phone, but Ranka is visibly stunned when he pulls out an old-fashioned flip phone. Ranka promises to get him a smartphone next time. Shikami starts a philosophical rant about how smartphones are tools for validation that humanity isn't ready for, but Ranka ignores him and demands his contact info so she can it with her sister. Shikami rides his bike through the city on a pleasant morning, thinking that he will eventually get used to the long commute. His phone receives a notification. He checks it expecting a message from Ranka but realizes it is from an email address he does not recognize. He opens the message to find an old photograph of 4 children standing together. The accompanying text asks if he will choose the sender again this time.